to the Online Digital Transformation Conference, our US edition. If you're joining us again, I hope that you enjoyed yesterday's presentations, interviews and panel discussion. There was plenty to take away, so I hope you found relevance in the content that is particular to the work that you are going about. If you're joining us afresh today, then a warm welcome. We have a great morning lined up here, so glad that you could join. For those that are joining us today, I'd like to welcome myself as Chris Towers. I'm the founder and head of events here at Raw Media. We're a UK-based company, as you can probably tell by my dodgy accent, specialising in enterprise technology, events and content. This particular series in years past has gone live in the UK with our headline event each year taking place in London. We've also served up the event series across Europe and within the APAC region as well as North America. Of course, with the pandemic, we have shifted all our in-person events online and will continue to offer content in this medium until it's safe and appropriate to return to our live conference offering. Over the years, we've welcomed some fantastic digital business leaders to our stages across the world, sharing insights on all things innovation within digital and technology, getting a true understanding of real business use cases and hearing from those at the forefront of digital innovation. We've been fortunate enough to be joined by some fabulous speakers across this global online series, and I'm thrilled to have welcomed some exciting speakers yesterday, sharing their work and insights into their worlds of digital business transformation. It's a big thank you to the organisations that have supported this particular event through sponsorship, making it possible for us to build such platforms and broadcast the events for free. We heard from Daggerwing Group yesterday on the crucial people element of digital transformation. We also heard from CPQI on the state of play in the world right now with regards to business transformation, particularly in the financial markets. And then we were joined by Work Technologies CEO and co-founder for joining us on the panel session, and Mo shared his insights on digital tools and technologies within the workplace. It was a great panel that we finished on yesterday with a whole host of digital leaders from both private sector and from government. So it was a real nice way to end yesterday. We're also joined today by Microsoft for another brilliant panel session, diving deeper into the cultural elements of digital transformation with 4 brilliant women in tech. So apologies for those joining us for a second time today, but repeat the housekeeping information I must do just so everyone is aware of how it all works and what you can do here on the conference page. So you should be with us on our content website, that's Beyond Business Buzzwords. If you're watching direct on YouTube or somewhere else, then the chat on those are not monitored. So if you do have any questions, they won't be picked up there. So you're best to join us at Beyond Business Buzzwords conference page. And the content here is complemented with the chat function, a live news feed, Twitter feed, as well as agenda information and announcements should there be any changes. I don't think there will be, but in the case that there are. It's also worth mentioning that chat function is the best way to kind of introduce yourselves today and ask questions. That's in the bottom right-hand corner. So do feel free to introduce yourself this morning. You can drop your LinkedIn profile information or just say who you are, what your role is, and the company you work for, perhaps. It's also the best place to put questions for our speakers. Our opening session this morning with Bob has a live Q&A, and the third talk this morning with Pascal Hoffman, that also has a live Q&A. And then at the end of the panel session from midday, there will be a live Q&A as well. So as we move through the presentations, feel free to pop your questions in there, and I will work at getting those to the speakers. In line with government advice, we're all pretty much working from home, so it increases the risk for technical difficulties for both myself, Raw Media, and for the speakers joining. We've hosted a number of these online events now, and we're aware of these perils, including loss of connection, a lag, webcams dropping, audio feeds being messed up. So if this does happen, we'll try and rectify it as quickly as possible. But as it is a live broadcast, it's not going to can't be the smoothest experience sometimes. So just have a bit of patience if we do meet any interruptions. Yesterday was pretty smooth sailing, so hopefully nothing today. So enough of my drivel and the housekeeping. Hopefully everyone understands how it all works and everything now. So just encourage you. There were some great questions on the Q&A yesterday, so just encourage you to use that as much as possible, and that'll be my main repetition throughout the day. Today we begin the session with Bob Howland. He's the Chief Digital Officer from Dawn Foods. Now, Dawn Foods is a global leader in bakery, ingredient manufacturing and distribution. Bob, in this newly created role, is a member of the Dawn executive team. He's building a digital startup within Dawn to help the organization transform its business model and launch e-commerce. He's playing a critical role in driving a remarkable customer experience, creating Dawn's future state and disrupting an industry. In this presentation, Bob is going to walk through with us his journey within transformation at Dawn Foods since he joined in 2019, and how they're building digital within the business in their 100th year of operations. Congrats to them on that. Bob will be joining us after the presentation for about 15 minutes of Q&A. So as I've mentioned numerous times, do put your questions in the chat as we move along. With that, the presentation is titled The Story That Started 100 Years Ago. So I'm now going to play that presentation, which is about 30 minutes in length, and then we're going to welcome Bob in for that Q&A session. So I will see you soon.
Welcome to the Digital Transformation Conference. My name is Bob Howland. I'm excited to share with you the Dawn Foods journey as we built digital and we created e-commerce for our marketplace. I joined Dawn in February of 2019 as our first ever Chief Digital Officer. And while I've been in e-commerce for 20 years and been driving companies and doing change management for over 30 years, that doesn't compare to the Dawn story, which is actually a story that started 100 years ago. To give you some context before we jump into the digital transformation, I think it's important to know Dawn's story. Dawn Foods began 100 years ago as a donut shop in rural Michigan. The company has since grown. It's now global. Predominantly, we're in North America, and that's the part of the journey that we'll focus on for today's presentation. Dawn Foods is a bakery ingredient manufacturer and distributor. We're in 110 countries. In the United States and in North America, we have 5 manufacturing facilities and 20 distribution centers. What do we sell and who do we sell it to? Well, think of Dawn as a one-stop shop for a bakery's entire needs. You've never heard of Dawn Foods because we're business to business. But trust me, if you've eaten a donut, it was likely made by us or made with our mixes and our ingredients. So we sell 5 primary things to bakers in the United States. We sell non-bakery food items. We sell processed ingredients. Think about this as a cake mix, a donut mix. We also sell raw ingredients, whether they're nuts, sugars, flours, those kind of ingredients. We also sell anything a baker could need, whether it's a cupcake dish, a box to put the donuts in, anything they need at all to serve their customers. And how do we do that? Well, if I said it was complicated, that would be an understatement. But we're a traditional food manufacturer and distributor. We manufacture. Some of those manufactured goods go directly to large customers. Think of McDonald's or Walmart, and they go by trailer. Our manufacturing items also go into our distribution centers, where they're joined by other goods, think sugar, flour, shortening. At that distribution center, those products come together, the Dawn manufactured products, as well as products from third parties. And as bakers, more generally smaller or regional players, order from Dawn Foods on a weekly and bi-weekly basis. We package that order, generally 10 to 20 items, generally in the size of a few pallets, and we put it on our own trucks and trailers, and we deliver it in routes that are pre-established to those bakers. In many cases, this is the lifeblood for that bakery, and we are their dominant provider. Now, this marketplace and this business model has been in place for, as I said, now 100 years. Dawn moved from a donut shop. A few decades later, it started becoming a manufacturer. A few decades later, it jumped into distribution. And a few decades later, it went international with a massive geographic expansion. As we sit in 2019 and 2018 and 2020, digital is a few decades later, that next massive transformation for the business. So while transformation is in our genes, digital is a whole new way of working, as you all know. Now we'll jump into the key elements of the business model transformation. I like to say two things to my team members and the rest of the company. One is that business model transformation, and especially digital, it's a lot less about the technology, and it's much more about the people and the business processes that are in place. The second thing, and perhaps you've heard this before as well, e-commerce exposes every wart in a business. What do I mean by that? Well, a business like Dawn is generally conducted via personal relationships at a very localized level. People are able to overcome a lack of business process, and people and relationships are able to overcome quirks in a customer's order, quirks in a customer's business, unique opportunities at a local level. When you think about e-commerce, it's a one-to-many opportunity, right? You build a website and everybody can interact with that. But it's also democratic or community-based in that everybody interacts with that the same way. And so you strip apart, if you will, some of the relationships and localization that, if your business model is not in place, are really enabled by that localization. So let's jump into three things that we found with the Dawn business journey. First, we really had to break this paradigm. Today, our salespeople drive to their customers, and a typical day starts at 6 or 7 o'clock, because we all know that bakers start early as well. And so a typical salesperson jumps in their car, pre-COVID, of course, and drives to their first customer. They interact with that customer, spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, and in that interaction, they're predominantly taking their order for the week. They capture that order. They might go back to the car, check on inventory levels, whatever, but then they inject that order into our back-end system, and they drive to the next customer. Rinse and repeat, day after day, salesperson after salesperson. You get the story, right? And so with e-commerce, the movement here is to take away the process that the salespeople go through in taking the physical order and spending all that time driving around their territory. Moving customers to e-commerce, which frankly, as we know as consumers, is a more convenient, accessible way of transacting. Yes, I want my salesperson as a baker. I still want that relationship. I still want to understand what's happening in the market. But man, I do not need to spend time with that person placing my order. And so the combination here of keeping the salesperson, but now doing transactions online, means that for the customer and for Dawn Foods, we're now accelerating business growth because we're driving conversation beyond the routine of order taking to how can we solve problems together and how can we capture market opportunities. The second key foundational piece of this is that it's all about change management, right? I mentioned earlier that the technology is the easy part. I've built e-commerce businesses for 25 to 30 organizations in my past. The technology was never, ever the sticking point. The challenge is always, how do you move mountains? How do you get an organization that's adopted one way of working to suddenly adopt a new way of working, whether it's a piece of the business or a major piece of the business? We all know that change management is really less about the organization, because organizations don't change. What changes? People. People within organizations drive change management. And what drives people to change? Leadership. Successful organizations around digital transformation have strong leaders who act with courage and conviction to set a vision, to enable the organization to go about delivering on that vision, and leaders that hold themselves and their organizations accountable to that vision. It sounds super easy, and trust me, It never is. So in the case of Dawn, we had a very embedded way of working. And one of the biggest challenges we faced was how to move the mountain and get the organization ready across a whole host of areas, get it ready for e-commerce. So in 2019, I did not write a single piece of code. Let me say that again. In 2019, I and my team did not write a single piece of code. All of our efforts were in collaborating with the regular organizations, departments, functions across the company and enabling a vision and helping those pieces of the organization build robust business capabilities, documented centralized processes that we could then use to tap into and enable an e-commerce platform. How did we do that? It was a fascinating exercise. So we pulled a model out of the big consulting companies, and we hired a consulting firm to help us drive this framework. And we hired a single third-party consultant outside of the big consulting firm to help drive the project specifically. I co-led the project with another executive, so we had executive sponsorship, and we created a series of work streams, a pricing work stream, a product work stream, sales, manufacturing, supply chain, procurement, HR, and more. In all, we had 9 distinct work streams staffed by 10 to 12 people, cross-functional representation, people from the field organization, the commercial organization, and our headquarters teams. Every work stream had an executive sponsor. Every work stream had a core team. And we also had an underlying support function, HR, IT, and other pieces that crossed every work stream, served as a holistic entity. And each work stream leader came together with these other support functions like IT in a 15-person core team that met every month to drive activation of projects, to analyze the ways that there were dependencies between these projects, and to do the all-important who is doing what by when. And so we had transparency for expectations across the company. It was an impressive feat for an organization that had never really operated this way. And I have to say that across 2019, we collectively moved mountains, and we really did get an organization ready for e-commerce. Some of the guiding principles here might be instructive for you. First, the efforts were substantial and they were sustained, and they were all around value improvements. So yes, we looked to take cost out of the business, but we also looked to build fundamental business capability. Second, these were shifts in the operating capability and in our capacity to deliver to customers. One of the hallmarks of this effort was not looking at the world from within the 4 walls of Dawn Foods. The hallmark became looking at our business from an outside-in perspective. How does a customer see this aspect of our business? Product, pricing, whatever it was. How does the customer see this? And what is the interaction point between Dawn and the customer? And we tried hard to move our perspective from inside the 4 walls to that intersection point between Dawn and the customer. Next, all of this is foundational to building a digital business model. That's going to take maybe another decade or so for Dawn, as it does for any major company, because you're really challenging how do people work and really trying to get people to work in repeatable and scalable ways as opposed to an activity-based system, which is so common across all of our companies. Next, it was an enterprise-wide effort. We had ambassadorship from the top down. We had C-suite executives, myself and another person running the project. We had weekly touch points with the other executive team members and regular touch points with our CEO. The messaging from top down could not have been more clear and consistent. So we've covered the business model process, we've covered change management, and we covered the shifting paradigm around moving from an order-taking culture to an e-commerce culture. Now, I want to jump into building the e-commerce platform itself. Because after all, you can't have a digital transformation without a little bit of technology. Here's a general timeline we went through. Remember, in 2018, Dawn did not have e-commerce. We did not have online ordering. We had no digital relationship with the customer. I joined the business in early 2019, and we quickly set an ambition to build a national launch for e-commerce in the year of 2020. And the question was, how do we get there? And here's a timeline that we set up early in the process, and I'll take you through it at a high level. One of the key aspects was to establish a vision. Now, being the first ever chief digital officer in the company, I was able to come in and bring decades of e-commerce and digital experience, and quickly was able to say, here are some things that the company is doing we should keep doing. And the flip side, here are some things the company is doing that we should frankly just stop. And we got alignment very quickly for that vision, and we kept moving. The next piece was the customer, right? The organization was coming from a perspective of building something internally that we thought the customer would want. I've been doing this for years and years, as I've said. The most important thing is to get customer input. And so we quickly put an MVP in the market. We built a beta online ordering system. We partnered with 2 different sets of salespeople, so we kept it fairly contained. We identified about 100 customers that were served by 2 different distribution centers. And so we could really control all aspects of the business in this pilot program. And we turned it on, and we listened, and we listened, and we listened. We spent a couple of months iterating on that MVP and that beta, and quickly learned that it was good enough, and that all of our efforts should be focused on the big launch in 2020 and really building a national e-commerce solution. And so we kept the pilot in market, and we kept our ears open. And for the next year, we kept listening. We then took a vision, we took this customer feedback, and we went back into the organization to reaffirm top-down validation, top-down support, all the way up to the board. And so in the summer of 2019, we held meetings with each of the board members, established a 3-year financial plan for the effort, and got affirmation. And then we were off and running. In that board meeting and in those discussions, we set across the rest of the vision and the rest of the journey that I'm going to share now. We agreed that we were going to build an e-commerce architecture from scratch. We agreed that we were going to build a digital innovation hub, and we agreed that we were going to launch in July 1st of 2020. Let me say that again. In July of 2019, we agreed to do an assessment of the landscape of the e-commerce solution providers and select a partner or partners. In July of 2019, we agreed that we would build a digital team. And in July of 2019, we announced and agreed that we would launch a year later. Again, we had no staff, we had no partners, we had no team, we had no code. And thus the journey began. We went through a very robust process with KPMG as our partner, with Gartner and Forrester providing third-party, unbiased industry information on the provider network. And we picked a series of providers. And we picked a way of operating which is relatively unique. Said differently, we did not go with a bundled solution. We got all of our contractual relationships in place through the back half of 2019. Importantly, we hired a technology leader in the Boston area and agreed to establish Boston as our foothold. In January of 2020, we started writing code. And in May, we finished the process of writing code. We tested. And then in June of 2020, we deployed. And so we went through 8 2-week sprints beginning in late January to launch an e-commerce business from scratch. The process we went through of how to do this is informing. Now think back, this is 2019, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term mock or what Gartner is now called composable commerce. In the old days of 2019 and earlier, most firms would go out to Salesforce, Oracle, Adobe, all wonderful companies with very good solutions. And they would quote buy a bundled package and live with the pluses and frankly, some of the limitations and restrictions of that bundled package going forward. And frankly, they would be beholden to what technology, what releases, what features and functions were available on that platform. Early on in the vision for Dawn Foods, we decided that that was not our journey. Again, no value judgment, but we wanted something different. And different in what way? So we aspired to being nimble. We aspired to having control. We aspired to building features and functions that were relevant for our business and our customers. And lastly, one of our fundamental principles was we wanted best-in-class solutions for each piece of the puzzle. Said differently, we wanted an amazing back-end commerce tool. We wanted an amazing front-end content management system. We wanted a best-in-class product information management or PIM tool. Now all the big guys say they do all of those things, but candidly, it's really hard to do everything at a best-in-class level. And so we aspired to build a modular or composable e-commerce platform by picking the best-in-class solutions across the way. And we used what's now commonly called mock, and the Mock Alliance has made a household word. We use this concept of mock, which is all about microservices, so tiny pieces of code to enable each feature that's unique and transferable. API first. So we wanted to have systems talking to systems and making calls and web services calls in the right manner in a two-way communication loop and calling only the data and only the information that's needed for the purpose at hand. Cloud is all the rage, of course, so we had to be cloud native and it had to be software as a service. And lastly, we wanted it to be headless. And so we really do see this dynamic where back-end engines that fuel checkout are very different than the front-end user interface that the customer or user sees. And we really want to have best-in-class in both of those arenas. And frankly, we didn't see any solution out there that had that bundled in an existing fashion. So we were very fortunate. Last fall, we built relationships with EPAM, which is a global systems integrator. We maintained our relationship with KPMG. And through that process, we also made introductions and created partnerships with amazing companies like Commerce Tools, Salsify, and Content Stack. And of course, Google and Google Cloud has been a great partner for us along the way. And we've stitched together these relationships so that they're all talking to each other. And in aggregate, this ecosystem is what is now our e-commerce platform. I mentioned earlier that a fundamental aspect of this journey for Dawn Foods was creating a digital innovation hub. Now, why build a digital innovation hub? Why not do a digital project out of your existing headquarters or your existing office? Well, I think the organization recognized early on, even before I joined, that digital was a new way of working. And it was working at a different pace with different tools and a different mindset. And I think the organization, having learned from what other leading organizations was doing, recognized that this should be dealt with differently. We shouldn't force digital to operate in the existing Dawn Foods ways, but we should rather free digital to work in a unique way that's more consistent with how digital organizations work. And so we had the benefit of that mindset. We formalized it in summer of 2019. We hired our first leader in September of 2019, and we've since built out a team of individuals in Boston that was entirely hired in 2020, most of them hired after COVID started. So in reality, I have not met most of my team members. This digital team is comprised of skill sets and roles that are fairly common for a digital organization, right? We do software development, we have tech ops, we have project managers, we have product management, which is critical to understanding what products should we build and interacting with our users to bring forth that information and translate it via user stories so that front-end developers and software engineers can go build it. Some of the vernacular we use is very, very different than the rest of the organization. We are truly an agile shop. We operate in 2-week sprints. User stories are the lifeblood. We have Kanban boards. We do epics. We track story points. And we do retrospectives. And these are not things that our enterprise IT team does. And these are not ways of working that are common or even commonplace across the rest of the organization. So to solidify this ability to work differently, we were thoughtful about locating the Digital Innovation Hub outside of headquarters. Frankly, it could have been a mile away. It could have been across the street. But we realized that the Boston digital talent pool, the ecosystem of B2B and B2C e-commerce, digital, and online companies in the Boston community makes it one of the top 10 talent markets in the entire world, and certainly one of the top 3 or 4 in the United States, rivaling markets like Austin, Silicon Valley, and due to this sheer size, New York City. And oh, by the way, I lived in Boston, so that was a deciding factor. But seriously, we built the team in Boston, and we will continue to have the team in Boston, and it's really driving new ways of working for the organization and helping us fully enable our digital journey. It's been a great story. As I mentioned, we started writing code in January. We launched in June, and along the way, we've had these great partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, and we've gotten an amazing set of press, whether it's Business Insider or Built In, Silicon Valley VCs. It's been a story that's captured the hearts and minds of other digital businesses and other manufacturing companies and B2B firms. Because I think it is relatively unique, taking a 100-year-old company on a digital journey and building e-commerce from scratch in a mere 6 months. I want to share with you a few lessons learned, and at the end of the presentation, I'll be available for Q&A. First lesson learned is change management. We talked about people, process, and technology being the easy piece. So for a 100-year-old company, this change management, it is hard. It was hard. It still is hard. And it's a long time and long-term journey. And importantly, it really can't be done alone. And so one of the things that me and my team members often talk about and try to put into practice are these deep relationships that we're building with our peers across the organization. Remember, this is the first time that we've been in e-commerce, the first time we've had online. And often we forget that people who don't work with this every day and have never been in a company that's digitally enabled, there's frankly just learning that's really important to enable. And we need to all improve our digital literacy. And so we spend a lot of time on this aspect of change management and on the concept of just educating people of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because it is our future, and it is important that we collectively go on this journey together. The second piece is that the business model transformation, in my mind, is the hardest, and it really needs an executive champion. We were fortunate in 2019 to have myself and one of my colleagues on the executive team serve in that role. Now that we've built e-commerce and we've placed it back into the business, we're fortunate to have an executive champion in the form of the president of the North America organization. Well, his knowledge of what we're doing is still coming up to speed, and we've got to partner together to work on outlining the future and delivering those results. It's essential that that partnership exists, and it's essential that we're aligned every step of the way. The third lesson learned is that e-commerce has far-reaching implications. It really takes years to get right and years to be embedded into an organization. Change isn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. When we launched over the summer, we knew that the tool, the platform, and our ways of working weren't entirely ready. They weren't 100% complete. But 100% complete or perfect was never our goal. Our goal was to build something that we felt great about and to get it out to our customers, and then listen to our customers and be quick and nimble with feedback we got. And we've been able to do that. I'm proud to say that while we launched at the end of June, we had our formal grand opening in July. We've already done 4 major releases. We fixed virtually all the bugs that were in the system, yet we're continuing to work and improve and optimize the system. Now, when I say the system, I'm choosing those words very carefully. The e-commerce platform works great. You come to the site, you log in, you can find product, you can place orders. All of those things are working as any e-commerce platform ought to work. The systems that I refer to really come back to point number 2. It's the business model transformation. Is our product catalog complete? It's not complete, and we've got some work to do. And then we have work to do to maintain it and keep it up to date. This is the first ever digital product catalog the company's had. And it's a great competitive differentiator to have our customers be able to see all of our products. Remember, customers in this industry order from salespeople, and therefore they really know the products they've ordered in the past and the few products that they and their salesperson talk about. But our customers have access to thousands and thousands of products. Imagine that product discovery that can take place every day. That's brand new to our organization. And we're just now building the muscle to be able to support and optimize the merchandising that needs to take place to enable the future and our vision of e-commerce. That's just one example of why this is a long-term journey and why business model transformation is so difficult. Lastly, I'd be remiss in not sharing a little bit of a plug for the team. Proud to say that in the summer of 2019, we set that vision. We put a stake in the ground that 12 months later, we would determine what platform we were going to be on. We would create alignment for how we were going to build the tool. We would hire the team, and then we would deliver. And I'm proud to say that we delivered on time, on budget, on plan, despite COVID. And very excited to say that Dawn Foods and our digital journey is off and running. I hope you've taken some kernels of wisdom from the words here. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm happy to take questions and look forward to what thoughts you have.
Joining us for a live Q&A session. I can see a few questions have come through on the chat, so if you did have anything more that you would like to put forward to Bob, do pop that in the chat. Just going to wait for Bob to come through on the system now. I can see him backstage on our event platform here, so hopefully Bob will be up and running and join the feed very shortly. For those that are joining us and didn't catch my welcome notes, a warm welcome to you this morning. Good for you to be with us. If you didn't join us yesterday, more of a welcome to you. And if you did join, I hope you enjoyed the content and the presentations, panel discussions and interviews yesterday. More of the same today. We've got a fireside chat next with Rick Lockton from the Walmart, and then Pascal Hoffman from Wells Fargo as our third presentation. Then we're into a break, and then we have a Microsoft panel session at noon. I can see Bob is with us now, I think. Bob, can you hear me?
Chris, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Bob. Really great presentation there. And first up, congratulations. It seems like you've done a huge amount in the last 12 months, well, since July last year, over the last 18 months, and credit to you. I mean, it's been an incredibly difficult year for businesses and for any kind of transformation effort. So hats off to you and your team and for Dawn Foods for managing to go about that the way you did.
Thanks. It's been an incredible journey. And as we keep talking about within the organization, our best days are ahead of us. And the biggest part of the journey and the hardest work is still in front of us.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I'm really glad that you kind of drew on some of the main messages that are kind of echoed, particularly from yesterday, and that's kind of around the people side of transformation, and that is essentially change management. A lot of kind of organizations and companies that do present on this conference series often come back to the people side of things versus the actual technology, and it's something we hear about quite a lot, and the resistance to change as well, and getting that culture balance right and creating a culture of innovation. And so it was great to hear from that point of view, and I'm really glad that you were able to kind of share more on the innovation hub side of things as well. It was a nice story, so thanks, Bob.
Excellent. Are there questions from the team?
Yeah.
The audience?
Yes, so there are. So I think first up, we're going to go with a question coming in from Aaron, which is due to COVID, and I think this is going back towards the start of your presentation. Due to COVID, face-to-face is now more difficult and building rapport is harder. Can e-commerce still allow for relationship building and personalized account management? So I think what Aaron's coming in on there is where you were talking about, I think pre-COVID, you replaced the sales journey a little bit and replace that with the e-commerce. In your experience, has there been kind of any resistance from your salespeople on that side, and how can e-commerce, removing that physical barrier, still allow for that relationship side of things?
Yeah, in our business, the relationship is everything, and so we never want to replace the relationship or end the relationship. We're really trying to make the act of a routine order, which typically week over week is the same.
Yeah.
And if we can make that routine order, if we can take that out of the relationship equation and make it really put it in the hands of the customer where they can do it in their convenience wherever they want. And we're really training the sales team that let's enable that, and let's therefore make your conversation more rich, more deep, more dimensional. You have the opportunity to make sure that the order is correct, because we built the platform so that the salespeople can see exactly what customers are doing. And they have the opportunity in that weekly call, which is now more phone than in person, they have the opportunity to say, hey, Chris, I see you put these things in the order and in your cart, but did you remember X, Y, or Z? And then that's a big relationship boost, because then the customer, think, wow, my salesperson really, they've got my back. They're still engaged in my business. They reminded me of something I would have forgotten. But then the rest of the conversation can really be about, solving problems and growing the business, which at the end of the day is what the customer is really looking for. Yeah. Help me get better. And so we're really trying to make this a 1 + 1 = 3. Mm-hmm. And for customers and salespeople that understand the dynamic, it's been transformational. And there are still more people that we need to connect with, and more people that we need to win over in terms of heart and mind. But that's part of the journey, and it's a process. It takes time.
Yeah, nice. That's a good answer. Thanks, Bob. Another one in from Rick. Can you tell us a little more about the digitalization of your supply chain and the connectivity around this?
So the supply, it's probably a two-part question, right? So the supply chain in and of itself has a massive digital opportunity, right? It's a very much a labor-intensive manual process today
Yeah,
across most people that do this work. And we all are trying to learn about AI and data and predictive analytics to anticipate customer demand and what's happening in the marketplace. And
sure.
so that's a part of our digital journey that we really didn't touch upon in today's session, but that's going on in parallel. The other part of the question may be, how does the digital platform, that customer experience online, how are we bringing to bear all that we know about supply chain, which in the case of the customer, it basically comes down to two things. Do you have the products I'm looking to buy? And when will my truck and trailer show up? Right? We all know that from the Amazon world.
Yeah,
Is inventory available and you're tracking your order. And so in the B2B context, that's very, very difficult. And we have the data and we're learning more every week and every month about the right way to bring that forth. And we look forward to having that be an integral part of our digital journey going forward.
mhm. Nice. And just quickly on that, you mentioned about us as consumers. We it's all about instant gratification, next day delivery, that kind of thing. Is that starting to merge into kind of the B2B world? Is there a higher expectation of instant, wanting it now, quicker, cleaner deliveries, that kind of thing? Is the kind of the consumer world spilling into the B2B side of things, in your opinion?
I think it is. It's slowly coming in. I think our customers understand that we have distribution centers and the product that they're getting is coming on tractor trailers and massive trucks.
Yeah,
Is there an expectation and desire for, hey, if I forgot to order something, could I call Dawn Foods and could you bring it over tomorrow? Maybe your salesperson is in the area and you go back to the days of the pharma
yeah,
sales rep that has all the product in the trunk. And could that happen here?
yeah,
The reality is much of what we sell is large packaging, right? We don't sell a bag of 1 pound of flour.
yeah,
Our bag of flour is 50 pounds.
yeah,
And so, the salesperson doesn't have all this product in the back of their trunk. It's pallets and pallets that customers order. And so, there might be a wish for same day delivery or next day delivery, but the practicality of most customers, they understand that that's not reasonable, and
sure.
the cost to serve would have to be shared.
Yeah.
And so there is a logical way that B2B is working.
Mhm.
I certainly hope that we can bring more and more of the Amazon-esque world into B2B,
Yeah.
but it works both ways, right? That cost to serve is something that we have to figure out together.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a really good answer. And then another one in from Casey. What was your biggest challenge with change management at Dawn Foods?
No one's going to be surprised. The biggest challenge is people,
Yeah,
right? We all are stuck in the ways that we work. Good or bad ways of working. And so to take an organization that has never been digital, doesn't really understand the context of what it takes organizationally, forget the technology, organizationally, people working differently, people having the context. And we talk about this a lot, and it's connecting the dots.
yeah,
And I could retitle myself. I am the chief move the dots closer together executive,
yeah.
right? Because people can't really see the connection points.
Mm.
And so I think as a leader for this kind of a transformation, it's really all about giving context to the dots and moving them closer together so that people can really understand them. And to use an old phrase, they can see the whole board, right? If you're a chess player, you really want to see the whole board. And
Mhm.
that's really hard for people that have never been in these businesses. And so that's a lot of what I'm trying to do. And that is day in and day out, continues to be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, of course. And then you mentioned in the presentation that the majority of the team was built post COVID. Um, and a lot of discussion on one of our previous events earlier on in the pandemic for our UK's edition of this series was a lot of conversation around onboarding and how do you go about that, during COVID, and what digital tools and tech do you kind of use in the workplace kind of to enable that. So how did you go about onboarding, new team members, and was that a difficult process? Obviously that really falls into the bracket of that change management process, but how difficult was that building that team without, you said you've not met them face to face, which must be, very difficult as a leader.
I still haven't met most of them face to face.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty passionate about the talent management, and I'm a firm believer that it's my job to hire people. It's not HR's job.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that the onboarding process starts when you write the job description, frankly, and you need to be thoughtful about appealing to the target candidate's wishes and motivations, right? And so we're fortunate, we have this groundbreaking opportunity for people to join us in a way that might be the best job of their career, right? They're starting at the ground floor. They're starting with a, quote, well-funded, well-supported initiative, and they're going to work in a small, separate digital innovation hub where they're going to get to decide what tools do they work on, how do they want to work, and the flexibility to, if something's not working today, we switch tomorrow, right? We've got an executive that's in the room that can say, okay, that's not working, let's do this. And that change appeals to some people. And frankly, it doesn't appeal to some people. And so the onboarding process for us really starts with writing that job description, creating awareness for the digital innovation hub, and then, making sure that the experience that people have when they come into the org is consistent with that vision we've set. And where we do a good job of that, the onboarding process is very smooth. And I think by and large, we've done a very good job of that. Yeah. And the expectations match the experience, which at the end of the day, if you can bring a new person on board and make them feel as valued as you value them and the role they're going to play, it really is a win-win. Yeah. I'd say it's not hard, but it does take a very thoughtful approach. And you really have to put yourselves in the shoes of the candidate. And I think about it a lot like when I bring a guest into my house. I really try to treat my employees as guests in my house. And I really try to make sure that the team that's leading the innovation hub, we work for them. Yeah. And that kind of servant leadership is genuine. And I think people respond, and the onboarding process just reflects that.
Yeah. No, that's really nice to hear. And then the final question, you obviously last July set about the strategy and kind of the digital roadmap and to get where we are today. That was obviously pre-COVID when all of that was written up, strategized, ideas put down. And yet we've gone through COVID, we're still in COVID, yet you've managed to deliver on time, on budget, and everything, which is quite remarkable. How many times did you have to kind of revisit that initial strategy and kind of, adapt it or change it slightly? Or did you just go with that vision and kind of it's been tunnel vision and, that's how you've achieved it? It's really interested to kind of know a little bit more about how you've actually managed to get from A to B in that time.
Right. I mean, as I said, in June of 2019, we had no e-commerce, no provider, no solution, no architecture, no code had been written, and no team.
Yeah.
And so, it's some people can say that was a leap of faith, but I've been in businesses and we've spun up e-commerce websites in about 6 months. And because we had a pilot in the marketplace earlier in the year, we'd already gone through some of the tough learning about the two biggest challenges in e-commerce businesses. One is the plumbing, right? Connecting your ERP to your commerce platform. We knew all the problems with that. And so we walked into the project eyes wide open. The second big part of a commerce platform is the product, enabling and creating the product catalog. And again, because we had the minimally viable product and market, we had a level of awareness and understanding of what that effort was going to be that really gave us a head start. And so when we spent the back half of the year last year looking at providers and platforms and whatnot, we were very thoughtful about making sure that the solution was fit for purpose for Dawn. And then when we turned the calendar over to 2020, we had a very robust project plan. We had an agile framework in place. We had 8 2-week sprints identified. We had close to 50 developers from around the world, mostly in Eastern Europe, lined up. And we just hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And we did not waver to that plan.
Nice.
And yes, we had to make tweaks on, could this be done in this sprint versus the next sprint?
Yeah.
We had to make some waivers to, frankly, we had some people that didn't get COVID, but we had some people that had to come in and out of the project. But for the most part, we stayed true to the core team, the vision. And I would just say that because we had created the plan and we all had the right mentality to work the plan, we just had a common framework. And we relentlessly worked that plan. And good for us collectively across many organizations, we held hands and we stuck to the plan. And the results speak for themselves.
That's great. Well, Bob, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your presentation and for sharing that story, and for coming in live for the Q&A session. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and it's evident that the work you're doing is fab. So congrats on that, and thanks so much for being part of the event.
Thanks, Chris, and to you and all the participants. Hope everybody stays well. And as I always say, onward.
Nice. Thank you, Bob. So that was Bob Howland. Bob is Chief Digital Officer at Dawn Foods, who joined us there. A great presentation on the journey that they've taken since June of last year. So a big thank you to Bob for sharing that. A nice story told, and glad that we could be joined by Bob for that Q&A session. Really appreciate it. So we're now moving into the next session within the agenda. For this one, it's going to be a pre-recorded fireside chat that I did earlier this week with Rick Lockton, VP Digital Product at Walmart. In this chat, I put questions to Rick on all things that sit within the world of digital business transformation, from frontline innovation to new ways of working. Rick couldn't join us today, so hopefully the questions that I put forward are enough for you to gain more of an understanding into Rick's world of transformation and the role and experience he has at Walmart. A big thanks to Rick for making time earlier this week for the interview, of which I am going to play now. After that, we'll be having Pascal Hoffman's presentation, SVP of Commercial Banking Strategy at Wells Fargo, who will be joining us for a Q&A as well. So do stick around for that. But for now, it's going to be the pre-recorded interview I did with Rick on Tuesday. Thank you. So good morning. We're now going to be joined by Rick Lockton. For the last 4 years, Rick has served as the Vice President Head of Product for Walmart's merchandising organization. As part of Walmart's overall digital transformation, the product team is reinventing the art and science of merchandising, providing more precise product assortments to customers, improving ability to act on trends, and consistently exceed customer expectations on price and in stock. Rick is an experienced executive with success managing a P&L of over $400 million US, building organizations with over 500 associates, taking concepts from idea to scale, digitally transforming customer experiences and internal ways of working, and consistently delivering thought leadership to the industries he serves. Welcome, Rick. How are you today?
Thank you, Chris. Great to be with you.
Good stuff. So Rick, as I've kind of covered a little bit about who you are and what you do, do you care to kind of elaborate on anything that I've mentioned there?
Sure. Yeah. Been at Walmart for about 10 years, world's biggest company. So we've been going through a pretty big, dramatic change over the last few years as we try to digitize a lot of our offerings to customers, how we operate, et cetera. Very excited to be with you guys today to share some of our learnings and what we've gone through on this journey in case it's helpful to anybody else.
Good stuff. Thanks. So I guess a good place to start, considering it's a digital transformation conference, is to kind of maybe get your perspective on digital transformation and what it means to you. It's a pretty big buzzword over the last 5 years, and different people have different grasps of what it means. So what does it mean particularly to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I tend to not get too hung up on the actual definitions because I think it's such a broad topic that however somebody chooses to look at it is probably relevant. If you break it down though, digital is obvious. Transformation is something that's a dramatic change, a very large change. If you look up the definition, it's a metamorphosis. Like this is something really big. It's not just a step change in what you've been doing. And I think that's what designates digital transformation than just some of the digital changes, digitizing processes, et cetera, things that have been going on for a while. At Walmart, I think I'd break it down into 3 big buckets of how we're looking at it. And I'm sure there's plenty more in other industries or companies. The most important, I think, is how we interact and serve our customer. And the expectations of customers, especially in a retail environment, have changed dramatically over the last 10 years. How they interact with the retailers they shop at, which retailers they choose to go purchase products from, how they pick those up or have them shipped to their home is very different than it used to be. So we've got major efforts underway to try and help customers interact differently with Walmart, find the products they're looking for, have a great experience, and hopefully come back. Second big bucket I would call kind of internal ways of working. If you think of how business people do their work, in a lot of regards, it hasn't changed much over the last few decades. And there's a dramatic amount of new technology that can help business people make better decisions, execute those decisions, focus their time on things that are much higher value add than they used to. So we've got a lot of internal technology work that will dramatically transform how people in the business actually do their jobs and ultimately serve our customers. And then the last I would kind of consider the way of working between business and technology. If you're going to be investing a lot in technology, and if you're trying to adapt and to react to changes in the customer needs, you need to be really thoughtful in how you structure and work between these different teams. I think, historically, technology was something that we required to do our jobs. It was kind of an afterthought, and we would complain about it when it wasn't helpful or didn't work the way we wanted. And more, you cannot be successful without leveraging technology to actually serve your product to your customer. And so figuring out how the business and tech teams need to work differently together, be more hand in hand, prioritize the right work, things like that is really important. And we've got pretty significant work that's been underway for quite a while to try and bring our teams together and operate in a different way.
Nice. And a lot of the conversation over the course of this event and conference has been obviously about the pandemic and how businesses are responding. Many businesses are tackling new ways of working and operating, and especially within digital transformation, it's never been more relevant. What, in your opinion, should be the major focus for organizations at the moment with respect to digital and technology transformation? And obviously that's going to differ from industry to industry, but perhaps in general, and then maybe looking at the industry that you're in.
Yeah, great question. And to your point, I think every industry, every company probably has a different flavor on this, depending on how they're being impacted by the pandemic. Walmart is in a very fortunate position where market share is growing, and there's actually opportunity out there to take more business on, whereas other companies are struggling to just survive and figure out how do they keep their head above water. So it's really hard to generalize. As I step back though, and if I thought about what would be common or relevant to most companies, how we understand what is important to the customer and react quickly is something that I think is pretty common to pretty much any company. If you think about how we used to get data about customers, I work in a retail environment, so we would get very used to traveling to stores around the country and actually talking to our customers, talking to our store associates who interact with our customers to really figure out what's top of mind and how do we adapt our offering to better serve their needs. A lot of those ways of working are pretty challenging right now. It's not easy to travel around the country. In a lot of cases, I don't want to put my team in front of customers where they might be, causing concern about spreading the virus or, other things. So finding ways to use data and really break down what the data is actually telling you so you can make decisions based on it, I think is really relevant. And then the second piece of that, a lot of companies have been historically very good about understanding customers and insights and trying to figure out the long-term strategy of what they're going to go do. But being very nimble and agile, being able to shift your focus and priorities as the industry changes and as things are going on in day-to-day lives is really hard for a lot of companies. So trying to figure out how to step back and use the data, but then really think about how do I be more nimble in my leveraging of that data to prioritize different things is going to be really critical.
That's a really good answer. And you kind of touched on it quite a bit there, but what is the expectation on business leaders right now, kind of leading transformation during a pandemic? For those not already implementing tools and tech required, is there pressure? And what can, leaders be focusing on right now?
Yeah, good question. In some regards, I don't see my role as a business leader or any other business leaders having changed all that much. In some regards, if you think about, what a leader is here for, really understanding the problem or the customer need that you're trying to solve for, establishing a vision and some sort of future strategy that you're going to go after, clearly communicating, motivating, driving morale and excitement around that vision for a team to go get it done, and then ultimately removing roadblocks and adapting. A lot of those things don't really change. How you do them, though, however, is probably going to change or has already changed pretty dramatically. Leaders are very good at speaking to a crowd and doing presentations and finding ways to kind of walk amongst the team. At Walmart, we call it coaching by walking around, just kind of dropping in and seeing what people are working on, what you can help out with, what questions you can answer. All these things are really hard to do now in this environment. And it's really hard to generalize what are individuals or associates' needs in that environment. Some people are okay being on a Zoom meeting with 30 other people and hearing the strategy and kind of taking notes. And other people really need some one-on-one conversation or hand-holding or really kind of answering questions for them to wrap their head around, what is this thing we're trying to do and why are we doing that, not something else. So I think leaders need to be really thoughtful and in being inclusive and trying to find different ways to serve the needs of the different team members within their organization, and realizing that the solution that might work for them may not work for all of their team members. And if they want to get the best outcomes, trying to find ways to leverage different tools to communicate and get people excited is going to be pretty important.
Sure. So on that, would you say that communication is probably the biggest challenge right now?
I would say, yeah. I work in a very people-oriented business. I historically found myself in meetings most of the day interacting with my peers, with my teams, with different people in the company. And it's really hard to do those sorts of things now. So for sure, the personal relationships and finding ways to communicate and break down roadblocks and make progress, I think, is probably one of the most important things.
Nice. And then looking kind of more at the overall business and kind of, typical patterns of transformation, more than often during these events, I hear about a disconnect between the business and the IT, whether that's, the business and the finance department and IT, but, a lot of content and discussion around that area. Just how integral is it for organizations to be working closely together in terms of those departments and, working towards that common goal, especially considering perhaps that a lot of individuals and departments may be more siloed right now than usual. And what's your kind of general experience of this disconnect? Have you experienced it in the work that you do?
Yeah, I've kind of experienced that transformation here over the last 5 years, and I think a lot of companies can relate. And as you step back and think and look at how organizations are structured and set up, you've got very important structures in old organizations that were built for a reason, but it make it very challenging for business teams and tech teams to work closely together. You've got leaders with decision rights with large teams, and they want to control their strategy and roadmap and what they're prioritizing. You've got business leaders who have great ideas of how they want to use technology, but aren't really great at articulating why and how they're going to measure success. And so finding ways to get these teams together is super critical, especially to the conversation earlier. If you're going to be much more nimble, changing your priorities, shifting of what's important and whatnot, these teams have to be working really closely together. One of the things we did at Walmart a couple of years ago was establish a product organization which has helped in a lot of regards do this. And I think if you look across different companies, the product team operates very differently in different cases. In some companies, the product team is the business team, and the product or service they sell to a customer is actually a digital product, and therefore one person owns both the roadmap and the business or the P&L. In a lot of cases at Walmart, we've got it fragmented. I've got business leads that actually run our merchandising organizations. Think of categories like food or apparel. There are people running these businesses. My job or my team is to really understand the problems or business strategy that they're trying to solve, and then prioritize technology in the best way to solve those problems. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, I've found business leaders really have a great way of working where they come up with a list of what they need, but they're not really sure how it gets them to where they want to go or measuring the outcomes of that technology investment. So I think a lot of what my team brings to the table is translating that business strategy or an ultimate outcome they want into a technological solution that hopefully delivers on that. And then as we get going, obviously translate that to the technical team so we can figure out how to build it, what trade-off decisions do we need and things like that. But I think, if you're going to be entering a world where you're making really large investments and trying to change how a company operates, I think it's really critical that technology or product teams have a seat at the table with the business, really understand what decisions are being made and why, and can ask those questions and then also start to be part of the solutioning process.
Sure, and just quickly on that as well, is there any kind of issues, do you think, around kind of the differences in kind of culture within those departments, as in, tech stereotypically and digital, a bit more laid back and whatnot, and then the finance business side a bit more straight laced and, pens and paper kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, all of those offer challenges that you have to overcome. I think if you look 20 years down the line, I think when you walk amongst, the hallways of an organization, you probably won't notice a difference between a tech organization and the business teams. Mm-hmm. I think you'll have technologists, product people, business people all sitting together working to solve problems. Mm-hmm. It will be a very normal way of working, and they'll look back on people like us trying to solve this or trying to transform how companies operate right now and say, I don't understand how you even operated like that back then. So I think in the future, a lot of that becomes pretty normalized. But yeah, for the meantime, these are pretty big changes. And I think everyone needs to realize they may not be on the actual team developing the software, but they play a very critical role of understanding what are we trying to solve for? What are the reasons why it may fail? What would need to be true for me to adopt that technology or for a customer to adopt it? Because not everybody kind of checks all these boxes on their own, and we've got to work together as a team to get it done.
Nice. And you mentioned about the significant changes to the technology and product business structures at Walmart. But how often have you kind of revisited your organizational strategy and the operating model kind of before the pandemic and obviously since the pandemic?
Yeah, so we started a pretty broad technological transformation about 5 years ago, and it's been pretty well underway. Mm-hmm. Now, last fall, we also had a pretty large business structural change. Historically, our e-commerce teams operated separately from our brick and mortar teams, and the way the customer was shopping with us, it just didn't make sense to operate like that anymore. Mm-hmm. So we were already in the process of moving these teams together from a business standpoint, and then also everything trickles down from there. Obviously any product or tech team that supports those business teams would need to change as a result. Right when the pandemic hit. So, obviously there's a lot of change that goes on during a structural organizational transformation within a company. And it's really difficult to do that in a pandemic environment where people are working from home. To the conversation earlier, you can't really hear the water cooler talk that easily. You can't walk the halls and just hear what's on people's minds and what's concerning them. So I think companies need to be pretty thoughtful in how they go about doing this. One of the things I found to be quite useful is to start within one small project, get it right there and have everybody excited about the results, and then take the leaders from that project and start spreading them out to other projects. And then you kind of naturally spread out an organizational change. Now, some companies don't have the freedom to take that much time to do it. And some, may be in a crisis where there literally is an existential threat if they don't change how they operate. And so they've got to go do a big bang and change it all at once. But this is a really tough environment to be going through those sorts of changes. And I think companies need to really think through the change management strategy, how they're going to communicate to their employees and make sure that the message is being communicated, that the associates are being listened to, and that they're adapting quickly.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned about the water cooler moments. It's something we're hearing lots of, particularly we've just run some events in the UK and Europe online, and a lot of people are talking about how these, the end of the water cooler moments are kind of stifling innovation somewhat, and it's about how we can rediscover those moments and those passing moments, more so digitally, and what organizations can do to kind of encourage us a little bit more. So it's interesting that you mentioned that as well. So again, moving back again towards the business, what are the most important things when putting forward a case of technology implementation to kind of senior leadership, and what should leaders or department leaders consider when doing so, and where can they expect resistance?
I think the most important thing is always to understand the business strategy and how success is going to be measured. I think in a lot of cases, big projects or initiatives are started without great clarity of what is the business strategy and how are we going to decide whether we were successful at the end of this thing or not. So that's probably the most important thing that I would say to any organization or any leader trying to do this sort of thing, is really clearly get that on paper, get the right stakeholders in the room to agree to it, and make sure everyone's on the same page. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, we used to have long-term roadmaps, 2-3 year roadmaps that we had pretty clear ideas of what we were going to deliver when. And I think a lot of those are slightly going out the window with the amount of change and the accelerated environment that we're in right now, where just everything is unpredictable. And this month, something very different is happening than we would have expected a month ago. So I think timelines are shortening, and your aspirations or goals are coming in by a year or two, and they're a little bit more intangible in nature. There are a couple of things I would say are useful, or that I found, at least in my time, to help make sure people are aligned when you're working on a new initiative or project. The first is, obviously getting a business leader or a stakeholder that's highly credible, that when people see assigned to a project, they say, oh, well, if that person's on the project, I'm going to be on board. And that person also realizes their role is both to provide feedback to the team and make sure they're headed in the right direction, but also to get their team in line when it's time to roll out and to help drive the change. I've also learned, especially if you're working on a bigger initiative that's a little more ambiguous or vague, that a clickable prototype can really help get business leaders' heads wrapped around what actually is this thing. Can't tell you how many times I've been in a room where I've described what we're going to do to solve a problem, and I'll have one person say, well, it's going to do this, right? And another person says, well, no, it's not going to do that. It's going to do this. And everyone's kind of having this debate over what it's going to do. And I'm thinking in my head, like, gosh, I haven't even thought of that. We're not going to get to that for another year. But if you have something kind of on paper or a digital clickable prototype that you can kind of walk people through and say, like, this is what the experience will look like for a customer end user, it makes it much more tangible and easy for people to react to. And I don't think they have to be such a massive investment that you take a couple months off to go do it. I think you can throw these things together over the course of a couple of days or a week, which really helps. Mm-hmm. But the thing I always lean back on and try and do the most is just get something in market quickly. Nothing tells you better whether something's going to be successful than actually putting something out there to a small group of users or customers and getting real feedback, and then using that to guide where you go next.
Sure. And has it been the case too often that we see organizations just trying to go for the next shiny new tech and paying far too much lip service to things like the Gartner hype cycle and thinking, right, well, this is here, we need to grab this and implement it. We don't know how it's going to look, how it's going to work, but it's on the hype cycle. It's, we need this involved. Have you experienced that before?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it gets back to the org structure, how you operate between business and tech. Technologists are always going to want to leverage the newest technology to go do something really cool and interesting. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always mean that that's going to add any business value or solve a customer problem. And so this is where really combining somebody who knows how to use tools that are new and advanced from a technology standpoint, but also can really understand the business needs and what's trying to get done can help solve that gap.
Nice. And then how much do you think the pandemic, this crisis, will change businesses in a sense of digital technology transformation? Budgets are going to be changing, but digital adoption and technology adoption surely is going to be on the up. what can we kind of expect to see from frontline innovation, both internally within an organization and kind of customer facing? And again, it's heavily dependent on the industry, but kind of your 2 pence worth on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing every company has in common is their workforce is going to be operating differently. Many people can't go to the office anymore, and figuring out how to work from a distance is going to be important. Anyone in a consumer facing world, obviously the customer is shopping differently than they used to, and you've got to really think how you're going to attract them and serve their needs in a different way. Mm-hmm. If I step back though and really thought about like what companies need to think about or be going through, one thing that's really important when you've got a strong tech organization or product organization is this thought process that you can do everything. And in a lot of cases, like companies don't have unlimited resources, and you've got to be really thoughtful about where you're making investments versus where you're going to partner, license, pay somebody else to do something that's not your secret sauce. And we at Walmart, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out like what's our true competitive advantage? What's the one thing that we don't want anyone else to do, or we don't want to partner with anyone else? Because that's our secret sauce, and we think that's what will help us differentiate. And I think all companies are going to need to figure out, where do I want to double down? Where do I need to do it internally so it stays confidential? Other people can't use my IP. Mm-hmm. And where am I okay saying, I need this to get the job done, but it's not going to be how I differentiate myself. And so I'm comfortable buying, licensing, something off the shelf. I think from a technology perspective, that'll be a really important lesson for a lot of companies to learn, because I find a lot of companies today are very good at wanting to build everything themselves, and there's just not enough capacity to do it all.
Sure. Well, look, Rick, it's been fantastic having you for 20 minutes. We could talk a lot more about a lot of the points there, but it's nice to kind of gather your insights into the world of digital transformation from your perspective right now. So I do thank you for joining us, and it's a real pleasure. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Cheers. Pre-recorded interview I did with Rick a little earlier this week on Tuesday. Big thanks to Rick for doing that. It was a nice chat and great to understand his points of view on transformation. As mentioned, Rick unavailable for the Q&A session, but did indicate that he'd be happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn, and if you did have any questions or follow-up, to take it that way. So big thanks to Rick, and a great chat there. We're now into the final presentation before a break and live Q&A, which will be with Pascal Hoffman. Pascal is Senior Vice President at Wells Fargo, sitting within the commercial banking strategy side. Digital and business transformation leader with a proven track record of developing digital strategies, translating them into actionable plans, and supporting their execution to obtain tangible results. Pascal strives to drive Wells Fargo's stock price up through digital transformation, innovation, and partnerships, developing and supporting the execution of impactful digital strategies for wholesale and international banking, including assessment and development of the digital capabilities, revenue growth in digital channels, and streamlining of operations through digitization, monitoring of fintech competitors, and assessing opportunities through strategic partnerships. We're going to be joined by Pascal after the presentation for some Q&A. So if you do think of anything as we move along the presentation, do pop it in the chat, and we'll position those to Pascal. So I'm now going to be playing Post-COVID Opportunities for Banks, which is from Pascal Hoffman from Wells Fargo. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. I see that some of you are joining from different time zones. So good morning or good afternoon. Glad to be here today. My name is Pascal Hoffman. I have 20 plus years of professional experience in financial services, a mix of consulting. I've been with Accenture and McKinsey. I worked for large banks, both in Europe with BNP Paribas, in the US with Morgan Stanley, where I was head of global marketing for subsidiary, and most recently for Wells Fargo, I work in the strategy team for commercial banking. Talking about strategy and banking, I've been in the digital banking, digital space for almost 10 years now. And I'm happy to share some of my experience, especially with the recent events that affected all of us with COVID. So the topic we're going to cover today is related to the opportunities created by COVID. And we're going to structure our discussion in three parts. First, understand the changes triggered by COVID. Then assess the impact of COVID on business model, operating model, talent, and culture. And then we'll talk about how to facilitate the adaptation to COVID. There are opportunities. It does create opportunities, and we'll see how we can capture some of them. I'd like to set an objective for all of us. Make sure that when you leave this talk, you have at least one idea you can take back with you in the office and implement. Really, if you're in financial services, maybe with some customization if you're in a different industry. Also, I'd like to give credit to Oliver Wyman. The content I'm gonna go through is largely inspired from a point of view published by the firm. Okay, so changes triggered by COVID. As you know, it affected all of us, both in our professional lives and personal lives. It touched every industry, from medicine, where customers, patients are looking for help online with 5 or 10 times more volume for online search related to telemedicine. I think by now all of us have gotten the habit of at least once a week or more order food and take out, deliver at home, so that we don't have to cook. Education, for those of you who have kids, I hope that they adjusted to distant learning. And in the financial industry, the type of the magnitude of changes that we observe is anywhere between 15 to 40%. So, for example, you have 40% growth in digital channel adoption. This is in sharp contrast with the pace that the industry has been observing for a few years, where the adoption of digital channel is moving more at 2 to 5% clip a year. And all of a sudden, with COVID, this adoption went to 40%. So quite a significant change. The way companies and customers are interacting is evolving rapidly. Zoom has become a main way to interact not only in the professional world, but also in the personal world. So Zoom communicated that they experienced a times 20 increase in just 3 months. In terms of telemedicine, we cannot see the lines forming in front of the hospital or offices, but it grew 10 times in just 15 days, right at the onset of COVID and the lockdown. When we translate that into what's happening within the enterprise, how the workforce is affected, it's really a global phenomena, and about 80% of the workforce has been affected by some kind of restriction. and that's very wide-ranging. For the banking industry, just in the US, over 20,000 bank branches had to close either on a temporary basis or permanently, and that's more than a third of the branch network that's been affected. So again, quite a significant impact. And all these changes, whether they happen with customer behavior, whether they happen between the customers and the companies, how they interact with one another, or within the walls of the company, they are shaping up a new normal. The new normal is really a common factor is the adoption of digital and the decrease of physical interaction. So from a customer standpoint, we talked about the pace of adoption of digital channel, and it's really a tipping point where we observe a flip of the situation where in the old normal, the physical channel was the default one, the one that people were counting on, and they were supplementing a visit to a branch, for example, in the banking industry, with some research that they would do prior or after a visit with a banker. Well, in the new normal, this balance goes upside down, and it is now the digital channel that is the primary way to interact with the bank, and the banker is supplementing this interaction. So now a typical interaction in the branch is, hey, I did my research at home. I started a loan application, a refinancing application. I wouldn't want to have to repeat everything I already did online. And I expect my banker to be up to date on the type of product or service I'm looking for, and supplement what I've done in a self-service mode. So this is a new way to interact, to do banking, and banks have to adjust to that. In terms of ways of working, digital is not only something that is dominating in the new normal when the interaction is happening through a digital channel, but even when the interaction is happening physically, there is often, and customers appreciate the presence of some kind of digital device like a tablet that both a banker and a customer can look at to a level set on what's been done online or through digital channels. So this is the new normal that's shaping up. It's shaping up rapidly. You may have seen a quote of the CEO of Microsoft a few months back, who said that about 2 years of digital transformation had happened in just 2 months. So quite a rapid change. What does it mean for companies and especially for banks? Well, it has an impact on business model, operating model, talent, and culture. In terms of business model, it does create pressure on revenue, on cost and expense management. In terms of operating model, it creates new requirements to business continuity and also to maintain protection of customers, especially their security with online transaction. When we talk about the adoption of digital channel, the main reason why it has not happened faster prior to COVID is because of concerns by people for online security. So now it's not a choice anymore. It needs to happen, and these concerns need to be alleviated. And then finally, in terms of impact and talent and culture, impact of COVID is really forcing companies to adopt some legacy mindsets, not only their legacy systems, which we often legacy mindsets, and embrace the new rules and new mindset that go with digital, with very strong focus on speed, customer centricity, experimentation with rapid iteration, and adoption of agile at scale. I hope that these not only changes and impact resonate with you. They may manifest slightly differently in your respective industry. So now that we talked about changes, about impact, where do we go from there? It gives us not only pause, but also an opportunity to recalibrate strategic aspirations for our respective employers and companies. And we have choices to make depending on the financial situation, the operational situation of our respective company. We may aim for different objectives, and hopefully we can all consider the different options we have in front of us from a position of strength. If it's not the case, we're probably going to go for survival minimum, just being able to weather the crisis and come out alive on the other side of the tunnel. If we are confident that we will survive, focus on what is the strategic minimum, and similarly to agile principle, think about what is the minimum viable business that we're in. Think about what is core, what is not core, needed. And for some of us who are in the best situation, who had done some contingency planning, had plans for new strategies, new business model, operating model, before COVID hit us, there are probably a couple of options that time and financial resources to consider implementing. So I'd like to walk through a number of options that are available to us, especially in financial services, and see which one may be the most applicable to you in the context you're in, and help more than just survive, but also thrive in this new environment. Let's go with the business model first. So the adoption of digital channel and the adoption of digital services is creating opportunities in retail banking to focus more on financial health, how customers, can maintain over time good financial health, improve their credit score, have some savings for rainy day or unexpected medical expenses. These type of service is something that can be added at no fee for the customer initially, but are probably going to lead to a more meaningful dialogue with customers, and a more intimate relationship that will focus not only on financial goals, but on life goals. Do customer want to go back to university and get a new degree? Do they want to save money to buy a new house? So the discussion is about what customer want to do with their lives, and not only about what they want to do with their money. In terms of relationship with the customers, I'd like to put an emphasis on call centers, and this digital adoption is really giving very significant opportunities to every company with call centers that historically have been populated with customer representative. The advent of chatbots and artificial intelligence makes it possible to create a ton of capacity for this customer representative by focusing on what is the most sophisticated and human part of the interaction, and leave the transactional part like authentication, business hours, resolution of simple problems to chatbots. These chatbots and artificial intelligence capabilities are becoming more and more sophisticated. They're even able to replicate some of the human feelings like empathy. You may have heard of a company called Mattersight, who is helping call centers match their customer representative with customers based on the need for empathy, which can be gauged in just a few seconds early on in a call. And that's gonna increase customer satisfaction by 20% plus. So those are a few examples on the business model, encroaching as well on operating model. In terms of operating model, what we observe in financial services is an extreme pressure on cost. You know that different governments have slashed interest rates to help the economy. And that means that profit margins for banks are threatened and are shrinking. And the only way for banks to remain profitable is to lower their cost. So a number of initiatives can be implemented on the cost by adopting digital capabilities, developing and adopting digital capabilities internally, adoption of electronic signature, for example, reassessment of processes that typically, historically, had a number of checkpoints that were spanning over several months, especially on how roadmaps were designed and implemented, typically over multiple years, and different investment committees that were deciding how the money was allocated, implemented, spent on a quarterly basis. So most companies now are moving to much shorter timelines, maximum 1 year, adopting agile principles, and that's creating speed to market and reducing efficiency, increasing efficiency, And then I'll close on talent and culture, which in my experience is really the most important and the most effective lever that companies have to take advantage of this new normal. And the adoption of agile mindset is really core with much smaller teams that bring multifunctional expertise and are working much closer together, having access to one another all the time, even if it's now in remote settings with chat rooms, for example, or electronic whiteboards that are open all day long during business hours. And that's really create the type of effective working interactions that accelerate the realization of outcome for customers and for companies by the same token. This agile mindset is, I think, very important to adopt, not only by teams kind of lower in the hierarchical pyramid in corporations, but just as importantly by the executive leadership team, which can substitute maybe a more historical and default way to lead or in a command and control setting, and now adopt a servant model of leadership where decision-making authority is pushed down to people who are closer to the customer, and executive leaders are empowering those customer-facing employees to make decisions and removing impediments so that they can get the work done. So I covered a few of the options that are in front of us for consideration. I would be happy to continue this discussion live today for the time we have allocated, or later, and I'd like to leave you with my contact information, email, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Hopefully we can connect and share our respective experience. Thank you for your attention on this recording.
Presenting on the journey that Wells Fargo has taken, the journey he's taken on kind of post-COVID opportunities. So a welcome presentation from Pascal there, who I thank. Just going to wait for Pascal to now join us for the live Q&A element. I can see he's backstage, so we'll just wait for Pascal to get his camera and mic on so we can continue that conversation. Just quickly, while we wait for that, after this Q&A session for the next 10 minutes, we will be into a morning break, and then at noon Eastern time, we will be having a Microsoft panel session, diving deeper into the cultural side of things, of which we've heard quite a bit about during the last 2 days, and Pascal touching on the people side of things there. We heard Bob talking about it earlier, and we had plenty of presenters and panelists yesterday discussing the people part of transformation. So we've got a really interesting panel session lined up with Microsoft a little later after the break. Also, in terms of a few kind of announcements for those that have tuned in live, we'll be sharing certain elements of the event as an on-demand service, so you can watch back any presentations you might have missed. I believe that the slides for the last presentation with Pascal will be made available, so you can see those slides that Pascal presented with us. I can see Pascal has joined us now. Pascal, hopefully you can hear me, and welcome. How are you today?
Super fantastic. Thank you, Chris. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, we've had a good 2 days of the event. We've had lots of great content, so happy days for me. It's great that you're able to join us in this live capacity, so many thanks for doing so. We've got some interesting questions as well, so I think we'll dive right in, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Perfect. So a question that came in early, which was quite interesting, is about banks moving to digital platforms and channels right now. And then the question was, how critical is it for banks to be moving to these digital platforms and channels right now, given access is even more prohibited to kind of brick and mortar and things like that?
Well, it's become imperative. It's the trend of the past few years has been more and more digitization of relationship with customers. But with COVID, it's really it's a non-negotiable because of the restrictions imposed by COVID. Some branches are closed in the B2B world. The relationship managers are prevented from traveling and meeting clients on site. Same with customers. They want to minimize the risk for themselves, for their employees. So physical contact interaction is just not happening. And the only way to keep business going is through digital channels. So it's become something non-negotiable. It's not if anymore. It's a when, and really the level of urgency keeps increasing.
Sure. And then with that follow-up question on that was, is there a strategy in place when looking at challenger banks? So we're seeing kind of a lot in the last kind of few years of challenger banks, which are kind of digital first. They don't actually have the brick and mortar setup. With banks like financial institutions like Wells Fargo, is there a strategy in kind of almost competing with these, or what's the kind of state of play with that?
Strategy, I think that would be an exaggeration. I wish the Wells Fargo industry was a little bit more proactive in countering the threat of neobank and these digital-only banks. And a lot of people consider like this digital adoption as a technology opportunity or challenge. And while there's definitely an important technology dimension to it, I see it more as a cultural shift. And what I've observed in the commercial banking world, and more broadly speaking in B2B world, as opposed to the B2C, the nature of the relationship between companies and their customers has been eminently personal and physical. In banking, relationship managers know the entrepreneurs, the business owners. Often they've known the previous generation. They facilitated the transition, and they really believe that they own personally the relationship. When in reality, the nature of the world that we live in, more and more things are happening automatically through digital channels and ways, and tons of typical interaction can be automated through kind of a self-service experience. And so we're in this tipping point where before, the relationship manager was the center, the cornerstone of any interaction, and that was supplemented with a little bit of digital capabilities on the side. But now really the expectation is for customers is I want to do everything very conveniently from anywhere, anytime through digital channel. And if and only if digital capabilities will not allow me to do something, I like to supplement that by being able to call my relationship manager. So that's really a big mentality shift that is happening very, very slowly. And this is where what I see as the make or break factor in the race and the competition happening between digital first bank and the more established ones.
Nice, that's a really good answer. Thank you, Pascal. And then looking at kind of legacy systems in place within traditional banking, a question came in: what are the biggest challenges in overhauling these legacy systems and moving beyond them?
So I think that the challenges are both around systems and processes.
Yeah.
Historically, banks have grown in a very product-centric manner with silos
Yeah.
from both a system process, but also structural organization who own the P&L, very much product by product. And what customers are looking for today are seamless experiences across channel.
Yeah.
And they don't want a product-specific experience. They want a holistic experience with their financial services providers. And so the multiplicity of products, system, processes is really fragmenting the experience
Yeah.
and creating the challenge for banks to deliver this holistic experience. And there are so many systems and processes that it's a lot of complexity to manage. It's even more complexity to reduce. And there are certain school of thoughts that advocate for a complete zero-based redesign and adopt internally, what digital bank are doing and scratch all the legacy stuff and start anew.
Yeah, nice. And then you mentioned within your presentation about the agile approach, and I know from conversations that we've had, you're a big advocate of the agile approach. How long have you and particularly Wells Fargo been using these agile methodologies?
So Wells Fargo has been on a agile adoption for many years. I think almost 10 years now. But I'd say that with the size scale of Wells Fargo, there are pockets of early adopters, and there are also parts of the company where the adoption is slower and more early on in the adoption stage. So there's a wide variety of agile adoption, agile maturity.
Nice. And then we see a lot of on emerging technologies, particularly within business enterprise technology. What do you think is going to be most useful to kind of the banking industry moving forward, in terms not necessarily the emerging tech, because there's a lot of maturity with elements of it now, but what kind of technologies moving forward do you expect banks to be taking on and making it more a part of their business processes and maybe outwardly facing customer experiences?
So I'll use my experience as a consultant prior to joining Wells Fargo, and I think when you look at where value can be realized through different technologies, I think that analytics and artificial intelligence is probably the source of more than 50% of the value that can be realize through digital transformation and adoption of new digital technologies. I've worked with a customer where we leverage event triggered marketing with a new analytic infrastructure that increased new revenue by 20% 2 years in a row. So it's very significant. I think just one data point showing the potential of value that can be delivered through artificial intelligence.
Nice. And then a question coming here. What is the biggest element missing at Wells Fargo with digital transformation? And do you find yourself frustrated with any elements of the transformation?
What is the missing? Sorry, I missed the word.
What is the biggest element missing at Wells Fargo with regards to digital transformation?
So I think the human element, and I tuned in earlier today, and I was really encouraged to listen to previous speakers emphasizing the human element of digital transformation, digital adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at Wells Fargo, like in other banks that have been very successful in the past, there is a certain inertia in mentality. There was a certain way to be successful in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be the way that's going to make banks successful in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it both as a challenge and opportunity to shift mentalities and really reset, reboot the minds to really adopt a new digital first mentality, which is critical for future success.
Nice. Well, Pascal, that's all we've got time for now. Thank you so much for your presentation and for sharing the insights that you provided. It was real nice to be able to have you with us and to share those insights and the knowledge from yourself. So big thank you to you, and also thanks for joining for the live Q&A element. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for people tuning in.
Thank you. Cheers, Pascal. Well, that was Pascal Hoffman, SVP of Commercial Banking Strategy at Wells Fargo, joining us. A nice presentation on kind of the opportunities available to banks in a post-COVID world and kind of navigating that new normal. So a big thank you to Pascal for joining us for that. We're now going to be, and quickly just on that, as mentioned before, the slides will be made available from that. I know there's quite a bit of good information within that, so we will be sharing those. We're now moving into morning break before we finish off with our panel session on data, which is with Microsoft. Digital transformation starts with you, and that's back on air at noon, so midday, that's Eastern time. So take a short break now and see you in just over half an hour's time, 35 minutes time. So big thank you and see you shortly. We now have the Microsoft-led panel session, The Woman in the Mirror, Digital Transformation Begins with You. Real pleasure to be joined by a great panel here. We've got 4 fantastic women in tech representing Microsoft who are going to be joining us and discussing digital culture and within transformation, much of what we've been hearing over the last 2 days, which is great. Much focus over the last 2 days in terms of content with regards to culture within transformation. It looks like it's a heavy focus of many organizations, and also a sticking point for many organizations with regards to their transformation, getting that change management process right, and really trying to bring about and envisage a culture of innovation. I can see that our panelists are joining us now. I can see Sarah and Jansir with us now. Welcome. How are you both today?
Good, thank you.
Doing well, Chris. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. I think we're waiting on Federica and Tempest. I can see Federica now popping in.
Hi, Chris. How's it going?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good, thanks.
So it's a pleasure to have you with us. I think it's just Tempest to come in now, and I think we'll all be set. As we wait for that, in terms of the online audience, what's going to happen here is we're going to have a discussion between our panelists, and then we're going to move to a bit of Q&A from the audience as well. So just for those who are watching and within the Beyond Business Buzzwords page, that chat function is in the bottom right. So if you do have any questions as we move along, there will be some time afterwards for that Q&A. I think I'm going to hand it over now and get the panel session started. I can see Tempest is with us, but I can't see a video feed. But I think we'll get started. So I'm going to hand it over to the Microsoft team, and then I'll be back in around 20 minutes or so we can take some Q&A from the audience. So over to you. Thanks again for joining us, and excited to hear your discussion. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you, Chris, for your wonderful introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We are happy to be here at the Digital Transformation Conference with you all and with my amazing colleagues. My name is Jansi Reddy. I am a Senior Program Manager in Commercial Software Engineering team at Microsoft. And at CSE, we work with customers all over the world, and we help them address their biggest challenges. Our mission is to build strong relationships with their development teams and all across the world by fostering digital and cloud transformation. And we work really closely with our customer engineering teams, from developers to program managers to human experience designers, and also with their data scientists working on their AI and machine learning problems. That means that we need to have teams all over the world and with a wide range of skill sets, and be ready to work with our customers on customer sites. As a team, today we plan to share how we are going through our own digital transformation and helping our customers to do the same. So now next I'll have Sarah Spalding from our team introduce herself. Sarah?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Spalding, and I'm a Principal Engineering Manager. I lead our financial services industry engineering team. Our team is worldwide, so this concept of digital transformation is not new to us, but it has provided some interesting insights. It has been absolutely reaffirmed, I think, by some of the core tenets in cultivating a successful engineering team. Importantly to me, cultivating successful engineers. My focus really is on helping our engineers grow and develop in their careers. So my background is in software engineering. I've worked on products like Internet Explorer and the .NET framework before joining CSE. When I joined CSE about 6 years ago, we started the team with a charter to connect with developers and help them advance their cloud initiatives. We started with a few teams in a few regions across the world because we wanted to be able to work with our customers on site and to see how they work to better understand what they were facing and how we might be able to help. In the past 6 years, we've experimented a lot. We've failed and learned from our mistakes and have expanded our organization to have over 70 teams. So when the pandemic started, we were prepared in some ways because we were already working distributed and we were already remote. We were used to working across time zones and cultures already. We were fortunate to have that experience, and we were able to help some of our customers and our own product teams at Microsoft transition to remote work. But there's still a lot of areas that we're still figuring out. And one of the most important parts of our work is building trust. The way that we created trust in the past really relied pretty heavily on being in person, even though we were very distributed. Obviously, today that has shifted really dramatically in the situation where we're in right now, where we can't be in the same room with our colleagues or our customers. The pandemic has really required us to transform and think differently about how we build trust in each other, in our own team and with our customers. And so we find ourselves taking more time to get to know the individuals that we work with and sharing more of ourselves than we have before. This culture of trust, we think, is absolutely vital in the broader digital transformation. We know that it's at the heart of how technology and people will transform our world.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. It really resonates with me, mainly because when we went to our customer sites and worked, hand in hand with customers, there are little things, the personal things that we would do, right? We share a meal together with them, we kind of chit chat with them. I feel like with this, when the pandemic hit and doing everything virtual, that personal touch is sometimes missing. So if are there anything that your team is doing to build that trust back and in a virtual environment?
Yeah, so there are lots of things that we used to be able to do that happen sort of incidentally, and you would chit chat on the way to lunch, or you would have an opportunity to really get to know individuals. And if we aren't explicit about it, online or virtual meetings tend to be much more business focused. So just taking a few minutes to ask questions about what you see in the background, or to be explicit about asking questions or sharing information to get to know a little bit more about the whole person. But really, I think that the way I think about it is to think about those things that you sort of got for free or that happened incidentally in a physical world, and how you can get that same context or build that same relationship in the virtual world. We have to be a little more intentional about it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Federica. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Federica Nacera. I'm a principal software engineering lead, and I lead a team of software developers helping our Microsoft customers with innovative projects on Azure. My team's recently grown, and that obviously has given me a lot of insight into kind of what developing and building a strong team culture is like while being remote. As a little bit of background, I've sort of got a background in both data science and software, and so my particular area of interest is really building systems that bring machine learning models to production.
Thank you, Federica. Tempest, you're up next.
Great. Hi, my name is Tempest van Skyke, and I am a senior data scientist in the health industry in commercial software engineering. And I'm a biomedical engineer with 15 years of experience working in health technology. So I consider myself a full stack innovator, having experience in data science, in medical technology, medical UX and product design, and even working in the wet lab and doing clinical research. And all of that has helped me to improve healthcare with real applications of AI to medicine and biomedical sciences. And in my role and within CAC, I work closely with our healthcare customers, so hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and so on. And so the type of projects we're seeing over the pandemic has really changed, and as has our way of working with our healthcare customers.
Thank you, Tempest. So a little bit more about myself and our team. With the pandemic, we were prepared in some ways because we already had distributed teams, right? And we have over 70 teams, and we are already remote, working across different time zones. Now we are often helping many of our customers and also our product groups within Microsoft in learning how we make it work. Right, the digital transformation have been, greatly accelerated this year in healthcare, manufacturing, business systems. Advances in digital transformation have occurred in days and months instead of years. To give you an example, we are currently working with the healthcare network on touchless patient experience and check-in, so that they don't have to, transfer things back and forth with the front desk agents, especially during these COVID times. So today we thought we could share with you all what we are seeing as we work very closely with our customers to facilitate digital transformation in these industries. So there are many things that we are still figuring out. We are, continuously learning, and we are upskilling and envisioning our projects with our customers and how we understand our customer challenges. Since we are not, like we mentioned, we're no longer able to feel and see the issues they're facing in person. And also how we connect with them and how we build trust with them, to Sarah's point. And it is very different right now. Our ability to relate to our customers and each other is now highly dependent on our ability to listen more closely and empathize with what they're feeling and dealing with right now. And then the last point is that our intuition and experience from our remote distributed model is tested every single day. We are continually learning, and we wanted to share some of our insights with you. So, Sarah, do you want to expand on the challenges of trust that you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah. So one of the things that we see when we talk about building trust is making sure that people feel comfortable. And lots of times when you're working with a new organization, there's a tendency to feel like, oh, do I know everything that I need to know, or will they think that I'm good at my job, or will my gaps be exposed? Will I somehow not be okay? And so one of the things that we try really hard to do is to focus on upskilling and really share the perspective that everybody is both expert and learner, often in the same hour. We have never been to a customer's we've never worked with a customer and found that they had exactly the same stack as any other customer. There's always something different. There's always a new technology or new version to go and learn. And so, nobody can be completely knowledgeable about all the things. And so being just really transparent about that is a great opportunity to kind of level the playing field and to help people understand that they will both share their expertise and learn something new in any project. And the more sort of transparent and kind of matter of fact we are about that, the more comfortable people can be. And so one of the things that has been really fun about working with Tempest and Federica is that there are a lot of different ways that we can really reinforce that idea of upskilling and kind of sharing what we know. And so I was hoping that Federica could maybe talk about some of the ways that she and her team do that.
Sure, absolutely. So as a manager of a team that's sort of now all distributed engineers, and as Sarah and Jancy said previously, they weren't quite so distributed beforehand, and we were more sort of office-based. We've tried to kind of continue building relationships and sharing knowledge and expertise between people. And what's worked really well has been pair programming sort of more often within our teams and with our customers. And pair programming has proven to be really effective to kind of help continue growing our culture of, needing to be continuous learners, needing to be really open and vulnerable, as Sarah was sort of alluding to, while ensuring that individuals feel supported and, really importantly, not alone, because it's very easy to feel kind of isolated and alone, given that all our interactions are online. And, as a team that pushes forward kind of digital transformations for our customers every day, we have to be really agile and adaptive to changing our plans while we're working with these new technologies. And from a team perspective, this kind of learning always takes quite significant cognitive strength and willpower, and again, even more so while remote. So as a manager of a team, it's really important to kind of impart the energy to the team to keep them excited and motivated during these times. And a couple of things that we've sort of adopted has been to, try and bookend meetings with some friendly conversation, whether it's talking about, a film that they've recently watched on Netflix or Prime, giving our pets a few minutes of airtime. And we've also tried to infuse some fun into our agile meetings by giving a fun fact during stand-up along with our status update. So the other day we all shared our favorite Halloween candy while growing up. And it just kind of, helps us continue to get to know one another. We also spend maybe a couple of minutes after planning playing, online games such as Scribble. So yeah, my most important lesson sort of in keeping a team motivated and driven for this kind of digital transformation would be to have a little fun. Tempest, do you have anything sort of to add from the customer perspective?
Yeah, so because we work so closely with customers, it is interesting to see how digital transformation has happened on the customer side too. So what's been strange this year is that whole projects have come and gone without ever meeting our customers face to face, which is quite strange to think of. And it's quite difficult to build these relationships and continue these relationships when we're completely remote. So one of the things we found quite useful is we have now a document with a table where we have everyone on the projects, their role and responsibility, and just a photo of each person and a kind of a fun fact about each person, because that helps to humanize the people that you're working with, especially because people can't always have their cameras on or don't always want to have their cameras on. But it is nice to see who you're talking to and just have some sense of this team, even though you can't meet face to face. We also used to have these multi-day technical deep dives where we would work on site for maybe 3 or 4 days to really flesh out the problem that our customer is trying to solve, and we would be there in their office with a whiteboard, and we just can't do that online. We just can't expect people to be connected to their laptop for 8 hours a day. So we've had to change that format up quite a lot. We have found that what we're doing now is 2 hours per day for a couple of days in a row with a break in between the 2 hours. And that has had some surprising benefits, like it gives us a chance to digest everything we've learned from our customers and come to the following day's meeting with a fresh perspective, which is good. And we've also learned that visibility of your work is a challenge during the pandemic. So we're trying to be more intentional about demoing our work and demoing the work of our customers to their stakeholders, because before we would be, on site in the office, at our customer's office, and everyone could see that we were working and collaborating. Now, no one can see that, and it could actually go by without being noticed. So you really have to be intentional about showing all the work you're doing, and we found that extra time for demos really helps in that regard.
Thank you, Tempest. So I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, you talked about upskilling and having people with wide range and depth of technologies. How is that influenced by what you're seeing with the customer?
Yeah, we really we see a huge range of experience with customers. Some customers are just starting to build an engineering organization, and so as an organization, they don't really have a culture of engineering, and so they might be hiring their first few software developers. And while they may be really experienced, the company as a whole isn't. Other customers that we work with have been building software for longer than we have, and so it really we see a huge range of experience, but even more importantly, we see a huge breadth. Like there are so many different technologies that our customers use. Our technology, open source technology from other vendors, and I think one of the really fun parts of being an engineer is that constant exploration and a constant opportunity to learn different ways of solving problems and creating more opportunities for our end customers and consumers.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And one thing that helps me when I go to the customer conversations is that telling the customer, you are the domain expert, and we are also learning from you at the same time you're learning from us. So again, going back to trust, establishing that trust was so important. So Tempest, one of the challenges that we've also been dealing with is seeing how our customers work, whether it's in a healthcare facility or lab or a manufacturing facility. What are some of the things that you see that are vital in understanding our customer needs?
Yeah, so with in-person customer interactions, we used to be able to literally see how our customers work. And there are all kinds of environmental and social clues when you go and visit a customer. So like, how formal is their team? What are they proud of? What is their work culture like? Where do different people sit, and are there silos within a business unit? And we might have even visited facilities like plants to literally see how something is made or how people work. But now it is harder to build that empathy, which you need to understand a customer's problem through entirely virtual interactions. So we really have to ask a lot of questions, and we have to have extra patience for all the questions that are constantly being asked. So I find it is helpful to play back your understanding of the problem. So even if lots of people seem to be repeating the same thing, that's fine, as long as we're all stating our assumptions and our shared understanding, and getting that out there for that shared understanding, and just being really intentional about having some patience. And I think that Sarah or Federica, you had a point about being comfortable with awkwardness, right? So there's awkward silences.
Yeah, I feel like lately my motto has been to embrace the awkward. Like I was saying before, a lot of the things that you get sort of for free in a physical world, like you were saying, you can see what their offices look like, you can see what their work environment looks like. You can pick up a lot of knowledge and background and insight just by being in their space, and that doesn't come for free anymore. And so we have to expressly ask it. And it can be a little awkward to ask those questions more often, or to ask questions that you wouldn't normally ask. But by doing that, you build trust. You show that you're interested and that you're curious and you're invested in their success.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah and Tempest. And that actually segues into our next question for Federica. Have you noticed any other areas where building trust and empathy has been more challenging as a leader?
Yeah, so this ties in nicely to what Sarah was saying, because it's not just kind of with customers that it's obviously harder, but it's also harder kind of to make sure your team is well and doing okay. And I've had to onboard a few team members without having met them in person recently. And doing that remote can actually work fairly well, but you just have to invest more time to build those relationships and be much more proactive in building them. So one thing that I've done has been sort of reaching out to folks daily, ensuring that new team members are connecting with multiple new people in the wider org each week, making sure that they have lots of people to reach out to and start building connections with. And as Tempest also mentioned, with customer relationships, the key is to really be patient and kind of have intentionality around it.
Great. Thank you everyone for sharing that. I think now we might be able to take some audience questions. Chris said he's going to be coming on back. There it is, that awkward silence again. Yeah.
Can you all hear me okay?
Hey, Chris.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that discussion. Real nice perspectives, and just some great points raised, and a few that I just want to dive into before we've got a few questions that have come in from the audience. But I want to go back to the start, and there was quite a bit of discussion around those water cooler moments where in an office we discuss things, we have passing moments, and it's often kind of a big ignition point for innovation. So with that, you kind of touched upon it, and we've heard quite a bit about it on previous presentations here. How do we kind of go about instilling those water cooler moments remotely, and do you have any kind of best methods of coming together in a virtual sense and ensuring that these moments still continue to happen?
So one thing that sort of my team does kind of additionally, not just my team, but actually we have 3 teams across the New York City area. We have a kind of standing 15-minute sync that is supposed to be kind of a social water cooler chat each day. And each member can join whichever ones don't sort of clash with other meetings, but they'll always know that someone else will be kind of joining it at that time. And sort of everyone goes there with the intentionality of either playing a game for a few minutes, sharing something that's on their mind, but really to not talk about work. So that's one thing that we've been doing.
No, that's really good. And anyone else got anything on that one?
Yeah, one thing that one of the teams that I work with is doing, Chris, is this virtual lunch hour. So where we would bring lunch and talk about food and what we made for lunch, and sometimes we take pictures of what we're eating and share with the team. So it's like a virtual kind of a lunch hour. So that's one of the things that we are trying out. Nice.
And anyone else?
I think that, one thing that I do is kind of getting back to the embrace the awkward is I'll just reach out and I'll say, hey, do you want to have coffee? I don't have any agenda. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. And, under normal circumstances, I could walk by or we could exchange a few words on the way to, to the way to the lunchroom or the way to get a cup of coffee or what have you. And so it takes a little bit longer because it's not just a few minutes on the way to doing something else. But I think that, those intentional reaching out are really important.
Nice. And then a good question came in, and again, something we've heard a lot of, particularly on this series, on our UK and Europe events as well. And that's about kind of onboarding. A question came in on, do you have any tips for onboarding new staff whilst working remotely? I think, Federica, you mentioned that you've grown your team recently, and was that during the pandemic? And if so, how do you go about instilling that kind of Microsoft culture of trust remotely?
It was during the pandemic. It's certainly trickier than it would be kind of in person. Yeah. But really my top tip is to be really proactive. And I've had to be really careful to kind of make sure I have enough time to check in with people. And to be really kind of proactive with, all the various kind of setup steps that they need. And one thing that we also do is to make sure that everyone has an onboarding buddy, so that if I'm stuck in meetings for whatever reason, then they have that first core person that can help them out with any questions. I know Sarah's also kind of been onboarding some new folks, so I don't know if you've got anything to add, Sarah.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really helpful is when you are fortunate enough to have more than one person starting at the same time, it's really important to connect them to each other, both because they're sort of in the same boat, and having somebody to learn with is super helpful, and also because they will actually be able to teach each other a lot, and that connection can be really, really helpful. And to build on what Federica just said, I think it's important to remember that people need to hear things multiple times in order to really know it. And so even if you feel like you've told your new hire 4 different times how your team does something, tell them the 5th time, because it actually takes 6 or 7 times for them to really understand.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And anyone else on that one?
I've just got something else to just add now. Sarah's kind of given me an idea, but because we're always also sort of onboarding customers onto our projects, because we really rotate, pretty much every 3 or 4 months, we're onto a new project. We're very, very proactive about having sort of laid out sort of agile process documents and working agreement documents, and that's been a huge advantage. Sort of just to flipping to this remote world.
Nice.
Yeah.
Janse, did you have something there?
Yeah. One small thing that I want to add is that more than ever, I think it's very, very important for the newly onboarded people to meet other people in the team. Earlier you would take them around the office and introduce them to others, and now that part is missing. So making sure that you tell this new employee, go set up time with these folks and have like a virtual coffee or one-on-one with them is more important than ever.
Sure. And then another great question that came in was, how have you looked to promote kind of mindfulness and well-being within your remote teams? And I think, Tempest, you mentioned about approaching a new strategy to how you manage your day and structure it. It's kind of, we see a lot in the media at the moment about employees being more switched on than ever, and having a real difficulty distinguishing between home life and work life. Are there kind of any more tips for stopping these blurred lines and ensuring we still get this good work-life balance kind?
Yeah, so actually Federica mentioned having a working agreement, and we're very explicit in that. And working agreement and agile process used to be kind of just existing in our heads, and each team had a way of working that was implicit, but now we're making that explicit, and we're writing down, these are our working hours.
Mm-hmm.
We're a distributed team with people on different time zones. These are our working hours that are friendly to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We're not expected to answer work emails after these times. And we're just really explicit about those things. We're explicit about, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We need to be a bit more patient with our colleagues and understand the childcare and pet care time that's needed. And I'm not sure if you mentioned, but no meetings Friday has become very, very popular.
Nice.
So I love it. It's a really good focus day. So just being very explicit and acknowledging that it is a difficult time for our colleagues and our customers too.
Sure.
I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to add there about particularly with yourselves, Microsoft, and you've mentioned about working across the globe. Even more so might be difficult with different time zones and trying to factor that in. So I imagine that difficult. But sorry, go on, Sarah.
Oh, sure. So I'm getting back to the point about being more mindful. I think that it's an opportunity to be kind of transparent and kind of share a little bit more of your own personal story. Like, I try really hard. I'm not very good at it, but I try really hard to practice yoga every morning. And most of my team knows, because if I fall over in the middle of my practice, I share that. And so I think this is a place where kind of sharing vulnerability can be really good. I think that kind of both sharing what you do and also, kind of sharing the challenges, and just say, like, last week I had a day where I just couldn't focus, and I was saying to one of my colleagues, like, I just felt like I was in a fog all day yesterday. And you could just kind of see the relief, because they were like, oh my gosh, I have felt that way too. And I think that there's a lot of people sort of comparing their insides to everybody else's outside. Like everybody else looks like they have everything so pulled together. Sometimes sharing, your own sort of sausage making, if you will, is can be really helpful to other people and help them understand that we're all kind of going through a very difficult time, and nobody has it sort of licked.
No, that's a really good point, because often now you see, particularly within the age of like social media, people just tend to share kind of the positive elements of their life and their lifestyle, and often neglect, the harder and more difficult days. So it's good to bring more of that human element back, which you kind of do get more so in the office. So a really good point there.
Yeah, one more thing I want to add is that, Chris, the next week we have this whole org-wide event called 1 Week, and it was really good to see even the management, being mindful of this mindfulness and offering like yoga classes and dance classes and meditation seminars. So it's good to see that management also sees that as a need, and for the employees to take care of their, physical or also mental well-being.
Nice.
And then, sorry, just going off that, Jansi, I think it really does start with kind of management. So, obviously as a team lead, I try my best to at least show that, kind of what's going on behind the curtain, as Sarah was alluding to as well. And like last week, I posted, kind of an announcement saying like, I have not got the flu vaccine yet, the flu jab yet. I haven't, had been to the dentist since the pandemic started. So I'm making a commitment to everyone that I will do those things to kind of look after myself, and sort of asked everyone to kind of do the same, and to make sure that, they're looking after themselves first and foremost, especially if, depending on what happens with the second wave. Sure.
No, some really good points there. And one kind of final question, regarding going back to kind of that culture and building that culture of trust within Microsoft. Does the culture differ from kind of region to region, or would you say there is a universal culture within Microsoft? Obviously, you've mentioned a few times that you're all at different kind of global touch points, and how does that work, and how do you kind of bring it all together?
I think that you're absolutely right. We are a global organization, and we see lots and lots of different cultures. And, our team just had a great workshop with Aaron Meyer, who wrote the culture map. And it was a great way of thinking about all of the different factors and the way that different cultures show up in our community. I think the thing that really kind of ties this all together, or enables us to work together so effectively, is that there's this foundation of Microsoft's core values around respect and accountability and integrity, and that those things really ground all of us in some pretty basic principles and kind of social contract that we have with each other, that those cultures kind of rest on top of. And if we can be respectful of those cultures and sort of understand the differences, then we can really get to a nice place where we can do a lot of really good work together that really builds on those differences instead of being thwarted by those differences.
Nice, that's a good answer. Thank you. And then anyone else got Tempest?
Yeah, when I joined Microsoft, I went straight into commercial software engineering. So I've not really noticed very many regional differences, because we are a distributed team. So there's usually on a project, there's people from kind of at least 3 different continents, you see just this kind of more global culture in our team, which I find quite lovely.
So, Chris, one thing that I want to add is that, for example, take the retrospectives, right? what we've seen and with working with global team is that some people are really vocal about what is working well and what can be improved, and some people don't want to share it. I might offend this somebody else if I share this. So maybe setting the baseline in the beginning of the retrospective itself, this is a safe space. And also, this could be anonymous feedbacks. Feel free to share, your experience or areas of improvement. I found that, it is really helpful when you set that expectation that it is a safe space and it is okay to share.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That's all we've got time for. It's been a real pleasure having all of you involved. I think we've gone through some great questions there, and previous to kind of the Q&A from the audience and myself as well, a great discussion on kind of understanding the Microsoft way a bit more. And it's real nice to see that that you're able to create this culture of trust and that it works really well and it's widespread. So a massive thank you to all four of you for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, that was a brilliant panel session led by Microsoft employees, Tempest, Federica, Sarah and Jancy. So thank you so much to those for joining us. It was a nice way to close off day 2 and for our US edition of the conference as well. We've had some great presentations across the 2 days. So a big thank you to all of our presenters, to our sponsors, Microsoft, Daggerwing, Work Technologies, CPQI, for all sharing, their take on digital transformation as well. A massive thank you to those, and for our great panelists just then and our panelists yesterday. We had some great knowledge shared within those. So that's all we've got for you on our US edition of this online digital transformation series. Our final stop will be at the end of November, where we are hosting our APAC regional event, and that's going to be taking place on November the 25th, where we'll be going live on Singapore time and welcoming speakers from that region to share their digital transformation stories. So really looking forward to that. Do have a look on our website, rawmedia.co.uk, raw-media.co.uk, for those upcoming events as we shortly announce our 2021 calendar as well. Big thank you to all the online attendees for attending over the 2 days. We've had some great delegates from across the world, mainly North America, but from across Europe and Asia as well as Latin America. So it's been a real pleasure having everyone on board. I hope there's been some information there that you can take away and some leadership points that you might take on board. As mentioned, we'll be sharing most of the content through our on-demand channel, so be on the lookout for that, and we'll be sharing some of the slides alongside that. So until next time, that's all we've got time for. Big thank you to everyone for joining us. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.